In the 1940s, there was no more happening place in Chicago than the Edgewater Beach Hotel. It was the place to be seen for everyone from Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig to Marilyn Monroe and Betty Davis. It hosted performances by Glenn Miller and Benny Goodman. And in late October 1943, it was the destination for the Purdue football team as they gathered for one final night together, prepared for one final game together, before reality interrupted their pursuit of perfection. Coach Elmer Burnham's decision to give his men the week off in the run-up to the road trip to Wisconsin was vital. It meant the men who were headed off to war could get one last chance to see their families before shipping out. But it also meant his squad would have little preparation for the Badgers. The men gathered at the Edgewater Beach Hotel Friday evening for a chalkboard session, and that would be it. To make matters worse, the train to Madison on Saturday morning was late. The Boilermakers didn't even arrive at Camp Randall Stadium until 40 minutes prior to kickoff. It mattered little. Fullback Tony Butkovich scored 3 times, while Babe Demancheff and Herb Hoffman each scored once en route to the 32-0 victory. When Butkovich crossed the goal line in the closing seconds on the final carry of his college career, he broke a 21-year-old conference scoring record. 13 touchdowns in just 4 conference games for the stout fullback from St. David, Illinois. It was a record that would stand for another 24 years before being broken by another Purdue All-American running back, Leroy Keys. Triumphant in their final game together, the team traveled back to Chicago and said a tearful goodbye to Butkovich and a dozen other Marines headed to Parris Island and then the Pacific. For the remaining men, there was work left to do. Road trips to Minnesota and Indiana stood between the Boilermakers and perfection. Burnham and his staff spent the week scrambling to put together a lineup that would be missing a third of the traveling squad. A few starters remained, including new captain Dick Barwagon and quarterback Sam Vacanti. Freshman running back Bump Elliott would see his role increase, and it paid off immediately with a touchdown in the first quarter against Minnesota. The game was tied at 7 with less than a minute to go when Barwagon recovered a fumbled snap. 2 plays later, Vacanti connected with the Mancheff for the winning score, and the perfect record was preserved. The Boilermakers headed to Bloomington to take on Indiana with the Big Ten title on the line. A Purdue win would clinch the first conference crown for Purdue in more than a decade. A first-quarter touchdown pass from Vacanti to Frank Bauman would be the only score of the day as Purdue won 7-0. It was the Boilermaker defense that repeatedly answered the call, with Vacanti and Demancheff coming up with key turnovers, while the front wall stopped the Hoosiers on the goal line on several occasions. The Boilermakers ended the season undefeated and untied, champions of the Big Ten. What's more, on the season's final day, Notre Dame lost to the same Great Lakes team Purdue defeated to open the season, leaving the Boilermakers as the only perfect team in major college football. Still, when the final polls were released, Purdue somehow finished ranked 4th in the nation. Burnham would leave Purdue after the season, becoming the head coach at the University of Rochester. Assistant Cecil Isbell would take over for 3 seasons before taking a coaching job with the Baltimore Colts. As for the men on the team, no fewer than 6 would go on to play professional football, with the Mancheff winning an NFL championship with the Chicago Cardinals in 1947. And Barwagon earning a spot on the NFL's All-Decade team for the 1950s. Bump Elliott would return from the Navy and enroll at Michigan, where he became the Big Ten Player of the Year in 1947. He went on to coach, then served as the athletics director at the University of Iowa for more than 2 decades. Alex Agassi earned All-American honors in 1943 before shipping out. He fought in Iwo Jima and Okinawa, where he was wounded. In 1946, Agassi returned to the University of Illinois, where he earned Big Ten Player of the Year honors, leading the Fighting Illini to the Rose Bowl. Agassi won 3 world championships with the Cleveland Browns before getting into coaching, which led him back to Purdue in the early 70s.
It's a great privilege, a great thrill for me. This opportunity, this challenge, and I like to think of more of an opportunity at Purdue University, is a tremendous one.
Tony Butkovich was also an All-American in 1943, rushing for nearly 1,000 yards and scoring 16 touchdowns in just 7 games. In the spring of '44, he was a first-round draft pick by the Cleveland Rams. Of course, Touchdown Tony would never make it to the NFL. A member of the 29th Regiment, 6th Marine Division, Corporal Tony J. Butkovich was killed during the Battle of Okinawa on April 18, 1945, the final major engagement before the bombing of Hiroshima. It was one of the bloodiest battles in the Pacific, with over 160,000 casualties combined. Butkovich's body was returned home, and he was buried at St. Mary's Cemetery in Canton, Illinois, 210 miles due west of the university where he became a legend. On a team full of heroes, in a season that was as close to perfection as anyone could imagine.